He rewrote my contract, but forgot who wrote the first draft. My name is Dr. Elena Vance. The day Marcus Hale smiled at me in the conference room was the day he thought he had won. I still remembered how calm he looked. His suit was perfect. His voice was smooth. The company lawyers sat beside him, quiet and cold. A printed contract lay in front of me. "You signed this amendment last year, Elena," he said. I stared at the paper. My name was there. My signature was there. But the words were wrong. The clause about intellectual property had changed. It now said that every invention I had ever created belonged fully to the company. Even the one I built before this project began. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. 3 weeks earlier, I had completed the most advanced adaptive robotics module our firm had ever seen. It could change how machines learned in real time. I had poured 3 years of my life into it. Now Marcus was claiming it as his own. He thought he had erased me. But as I looked at the altered contract, I noticed something small, a single formatting detail, and that was when I knew he had made a mistake. 3 years earlier, I had joined Ether Dynamics as lead systems engineer. I was proud to work there. We built advanced robotics systems for rescue and defense. I believed in our mission. I believed in building machines that could save lives. When I first signed my employment contract, I had been careful. I did not rush. I had studied every line. I knew how companies could take credit for inventions. I had seen it happen to others. So I wrote the first draft of my intellectual property clause myself. I made sure it protected both the company and me. Anything I invented on my own time, with my own tools, would stay mine. Anything built directly under company funding would be shared fairly. The legal team reviewed it. We made edits. By the 4th version, everyone agreed. What no one knew was that I kept copies of every draft. I saved them in a secure document registry outside company servers. Each file had a timestamp and digital fingerprint. It was a habit I learned in graduate school. Protect your work. Back then, I never thought I would need it. My project at Ether was called Adaptive Neural Response System. We called it ANRS for short. It allowed robots to learn from new data without being fully reprogrammed. That meant faster rescue missions, smarter responses, and fewer human errors. For 2 years, I worked late nights refining the code. My team helped with hardware, but the core learning engine was mine. I wrote every line myself. Marcus Hale was my supervisor. He rarely visited the lab at first. When he did, he asked big-picture questions. He liked to talk about investors and market value. As ANRS improved, investors became excited. Suddenly, Marcus showed up every week. He started introducing the project as our strategic breakthrough. I did not mind sharing credit. I believed in teamwork. But I noticed something change. He began meeting with the patent team without inviting me. He spoke to the board, alone. My name appeared smaller in presentations. When I asked him about it, he smiled. "You're the genius, Elena," he said. "I handle the business." I wanted to believe him. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts. The first shock came in an email from Human Resources. It said my contract had been updated the previous year. I did not remember signing any update. I walked to HR with a copy of the email. They showed me the amendment. My digital signature appeared at the bottom. The date was 11 months earlier. The new clause was clear. All intellectual property, past and future, belonged fully to Ether Dynamics. No exceptions. "That's impossible," I said. "I never agreed to this." HR looked uncomfortable. "Our records show you approved it through the internal portal. They even showed me the confirmation email. It had come from my account. I felt dizzy. Had I missed something? Had I clicked without reading? But I knew myself. I never signed documents without studying them. Marcus stepped into the room then. Calm, confident. We needed uniform contracts, he explained. It was standard. I looked at him carefully. He did not look surprised. He looked prepared. That was when fear turned into suspicion. Within days, everything moved fast. The company announced ANRS publicly. The press release named Marcus Hale as the chief architect behind the system. My name was buried in the third paragraph. Then came another meeting. Elena, Marcus said gently. Given the contract terms, the company owns ANRS fully. We've decided to move forward without your leadership role. It felt like a punch to my chest. You're firing me? I asked. Restructuring, he replied. Security disabled my lab access that afternoon. My email stopped working by evening. I hired a lawyer immediately. We filed for an injunction, arguing that the amendment was fraudulent. But the company's legal team presented the signed document and server logs showing I had uploaded it myself. The judge ruled in their favor during the preliminary hearing. I walked out of court feeling smaller than ever. Online articles called me a disgruntled former employee. Marcus appeared on television speaking about innovation and leadership. He looked victorious. But that night, I opened my personal archive. I began checking every version of my original contract, and that was when I saw it. Version 2 of my original contract draft had a small typo in the intellectual property clause. I had written inventions instead of inventions. I fixed it in version 3 before sending it to legal. When I looked at the amendment Marcus presented, my heart started racing. The typo was there. The so-called amendment used wording from my early draft, not the finalized version approved by legal. That meant someone had accessed my earlier files that were never supposed to leave my personal archive. I opened the independent registry platform, where I had stored my drafts years ago. Each file had a hash signature and timestamp. Version 2 was dated 4 years earlier, long before the amendment supposedly existed. If Marcus had copied from that draft, he had taken something from outside the official company system. I contacted a digital forensics expert named Priya Nandakumar. She listened carefully as I explained everything. Metadata never lies if preserved correctly, she said. Let's test it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Priya worked methodically. She examined the amendment file provided during the hearing. She checked its metadata, hidden beneath the visible text. The document claimed it was created 11 months earlier, but its internal structure told a different story. The formatting code shows it was copied from an older document template, Priya explained. Look at this timestamp fragment. It references a file created years ago. We compared it to my version 2 draft from the registry. The digital fingerprints matched sections of text exactly. Even spacing errors were identical. That means someone reused your draft, Priya said. And not from the company server, from your early version. But how would Marcus access it? I asked. Priya looked thoughtful. Did you ever share early drafts with anyone? I remembered sending version 2 to Marcus during negotiations, before legal finalized it. It was an attachment in an email. If he had saved that file back then, he would still have it. My chest tightened. He had kept it, waiting. We were getting closer. Priya dug deeper into the amendment's metadata. Every digital document carries hidden information, device IDs, creation paths, modification history. Most people never look at it, but she did. After hours of analysis, she turned her screen toward me. The file was last edited on a personal laptop, she said, not on Aether's internal server. She zoomed in on a device identifier. It linked to a machine registered under Marcus Hale's executive account. That's not all, she added. The signature layer appears digitally superimposed. It's a separate layer from the text, meaning my signature had been copied and placed onto the altered document. I felt anger rise in my chest. He had forged my agreement and trusted that no one would look closely. But we need stronger proof, Priya warned. We need server logs. Accessing those would require legal pressure. So I called my lawyer and asked him to prepare a new filing. This time, we would not just challenge ownership, we would accuse Marcus Hale of fraud. Filing fraud charges was risky. If we failed, I would look desperate. But I had no other choice. My lawyer requested a forensic audit of Ether's document management system. The court agreed to review new evidence. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his public tour. He spoke at tech conferences. Investors praised him. The company's stock price rose. Friends sent me links to interviews where he described ANRS as his vision from the beginning. Each time I watched, it hurt, but it also fueled me. Priya prepared a detailed forensic report. She outlined the metadata mismatch, the copied draft elements, and the device trace. She explained how digital timestamps from the independent registry proved my original clause existed years before the amendment. When we submitted the report, the court ordered Ether to release server logs related to the amendment upload. Days passed slowly. Finally, the logs arrived. Priya studied them carefully. She frowned. They've been altered, she said. There are missing entries, but missing entries can also speak loudly. And this silence in the logs was about to expose everything. The server logs showed that the amendment was uploaded late at night, at 11:43 p.m. on a Saturday. According to company policy, contract changes required HR supervision during business hours. Even more suspicious, the login used my credentials from a remote IP address. I checked my records. That weekend, I had been at a robotics conference in Berlin. I had boarding passes and hotel receipts to prove it. Priya traced the remote IP. It matched the same location as Marcus's executive residence. He had logged in using my credentials. But how did he get your password? My lawyer asked. I remembered something small. Months earlier, Marcus had asked to review a presentation on my laptop. I had stepped away briefly. If he had installed keylogging software, or captured my password then, he could have accessed my account later. Priya confirmed traces of unusual login behavior starting after that meeting. The pieces were fitting together. We filed a motion to reopen the case with new evidence. This time, the courtroom would look very different. When the new hearing began, the atmosphere felt tense. Reporters filled the back rows. Word had spread that new forensic evidence would be presented. Marcus looked confident at first. He shook hands with his lawyers and avoided my eyes. My attorney began by outlining the timeline clearly. Original contract drafted 4 years earlier. Final version signed and stored. Amendment supposedly signed 11 months ago. Then Priya took the stand. She explained digital fingerprints in simple terms. Each document has a unique hash signature. Change even one letter, and the signature changes. She showed the registry certificate proving my version 2 draft existed years before the amendment. Then she displayed the typo. Inventions. Gasps filled the courtroom. She explained that the amendment copied text from that early draft, including the typo I had corrected before the final version. Finally, she revealed the device ID linking the amendment to Marcus's personal laptop. Marcus shifted in his seat. For the first time, his smile disappeared. Marcus's legal team tried to argue that shared templates could explain similarities. They claimed formatting errors were coincidence, but Priya calmly dismantled each argument. She projected layered document analysis, showing my signature as a separate digital layer. It had been pasted, not signed live. She showed login logs proving remote access from Marcus's residence while I was overseas. Then my lawyer presented my travel records. Boarding passes, conference badges, photos timestamped in Berlin. The judge leaned forward. Marcus was asked directly if he had accessed my account. He hesitated, just for a second. "I may have reviewed documents," he said carefully, "but only in the company's interest." That was not a denial. The prosecutor, now involved due to the fraud claim, asked for a criminal investigation into document tampering and identity misuse. The courtroom felt silent and heavy. I watched Marcus closely. For the first time since this began, he looked afraid. After the hearing, news outlets exploded with updates. Headlines shifted overnight. Executive accused of contract fraud. Forensic evidence challenges tech firms' claims. Investors began asking questions. The board of Ether Dynamics announced an internal review. Marcus issued a short public statement claiming confidence in the legal process, but he cancelled his next conference appearance. Meanwhile, investigators seized his company laptop and personal devices. Priya assisted as a consultant. Within weeks, they recovered deleted server entries showing the exact moment he uploaded the amendment file. They also found evidence of software installed on my laptop during that presentation meeting months earlier. It was a keylogger. The evidence trail was now undeniable. I felt many emotions at once. Relief, anger, sadness. I had once trusted Marcus. I had believed he supported my work. Now I saw how long he had planned this. He had kept my early draft for years, waiting for the right moment to rewrite history. But he forgot one thing. I had never stopped protecting my own work. The criminal investigation moved quickly. Prosecutors charged Marcus Hale with fraud, identity misuse, and evidence tampering. Ether's board suspended him immediately. A week later, they terminated him. The company released a statement acknowledging irregularities in the amendment process. They claimed ignorance of his actions. My civil case regarding patent ownership resumed. This time, the evidence stood firmly on my side. The court ruled that the amendment was invalid due to proven tampering. The original contract terms were restored. That meant ANRS was legally recognized under the shared ownership structure we had agreed upon years earlier. But because Marcus had falsely claimed sole authorship and filed misleading documents, the Patent Office conducted a review. I submitted detailed development logs showing I had written the core learning engine alone. My lab notes, code repositories, and time-stamped commits confirmed it. After careful review, the Patent Office updated the filing. I was officially listed as the primary inventor. When I received the confirmation letter, I cried. Not from victory alone, from finally being heard. Marcus's criminal trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed again. This time, he did not look powerful. He looked tired. The prosecution presented the full digital trail. Keylogger installation, unauthorized login, file modification history, deleted server entries. Priya testified once more, explaining how each piece connected. She spoke clearly, without drama. Facts were enough. Marcus's defense argued that pressure from investors had influenced poor decisions. They suggested it was a mistake, not a crime. But forging a contract was not a mistake. When the verdict came, he was found guilty of fraud and evidence tampering. Sentencing followed weeks later. He received prison time and heavy financial penalties. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I stood on the steps quietly. One reporter asked how it felt to win. I thought carefully before answering. This wasn't about revenge, I said. It was about truth. But deep inside, I knew something else too. He had tried to rewrite my story and failed. After the trial, invitations began arriving. Universities wanted me to speak about digital security and intellectual property protection. Tech conferences asked me to share my experience. At first, I hesitated. I had always preferred the lab over the stage, but I realized my story could help others protect their work, so I accepted. During my first keynote speech, I explained how simple habits had saved me, keeping draft versions, using independent registries, tracking metadata. I showed screenshots of hash certificates and version histories. I explained them in clear terms. You do not have to be paranoid, I told the audience. Just be prepared. The response was overwhelming. Engineers approached me afterward with their own stories of lost credit and unfair contracts. I saw how common the problem was. My patent for ANRS gained global recognition. International agencies expressed interest in licensing it. For the first time, I felt fully in control of my work. The system I built to help machines adapt had taught me something too. Adapt when attacked, and never underestimate the quiet power of documentation. Ether Dynamics offered me a settlement to avoid further litigation. They proposed financial compensation and public acknowledgement of my leadership role. My lawyer advised careful negotiation. In the end, we reached an agreement. The company paid damages for wrongful termination and reputational harm. They also issued a formal apology, published across major platforms. Reading that apology felt strange. It was brief, but clear. They admitted the amendment had been falsified by a former executive. They recognized me as the rightful primary inventor of ANRS. The board also announced new compliance policies: independent contract verification, mandatory audit trails, multi-party approval for amendments. Part of me wished those policies had existed earlier. Some former colleagues reached out privately. Many said they suspected something had been wrong but were afraid to speak. I did not blame them. Corporate power can silence people easily. Instead of returning to Ether, I decided to start my own research firm. I wanted independence, transparency. I named it First Draft Technologies. The name made me smile, because every breakthrough begins somewhere small, and every truth leaves a trace. Starting my own company was both exciting and terrifying. I gathered a small team of engineers who believed in ethical innovation. Some were former classmates, others were young developers inspired by the case. From day one, we built strong documentation systems. Every project had version control. Every contract was clear and mutual. Every employee reviewed clauses with outside counsel if they wished. Transparency was not optional. It was culture. I taught my team what I had learned. Protect your ideas. Respect ownership. Never assume power means truth. We refined ANRS further, adapting it for disaster response robots. Within a year, our systems assisted in wildfire zones and earthquake rescues. Watching machines enter unstable buildings to search for survivors reminded me why integrity mattered. Technology affects real lives. Sometimes reporters still asked about Marcus, where he was, how I felt about him. I always answered simply, the case is closed. I did not need his downfall to define my success, but I would never forget the lesson he taught me. Trust is valuable. Proof is priceless. One evening, nearly 2 years after the trial, I reviewed my old contract drafts again. I kept them not out of anger, but as a reminder. Version 1 was messy. Notes in the margins, questions to myself. It showed uncertainty. Version 2 had the typo. inventions. Version 3 corrected it. Version 4 became the final agreement. Each step showed growth and caution. If I had not written that first draft myself, none of this would have been possible. I would not have recognized the copied wording. I would not have had registry timestamps. The smallest detail had cracked open the biggest lie. That realization humbled me. Big battles are often won by small facts. I also began teaching contract literacy workshops for engineers. Many brilliant minds ignore legal details because they seem boring. I used my story as proof that details protect creativity. I closed the files and looked around my new office. Whiteboards filled with ideas. Young engineers debating solutions. This was what mattered. Creation, not control. My story eventually became part of business ethics courses. Law students analyzed the case as an example of digital forensics in contract disputes. Sometimes I sat in the back of lecture halls, listening quietly as professors described the timeline. Draft, written 4 years prior. Amendment, forged 11 months before exposure. Fraud, uncovered through metadata and independent registry records. They highlighted the importance of chain of custody, digital signatures, and server integrity. Hearing it, explained so clearly, made it feel almost simple. But living it had not been simple. There were nights when I doubted myself, days when public criticism hurt deeply, moments when I feared losing everything. What carried me through was preparation. I did not win because I was louder. I won because I kept records, because I paid attention, because I wrote the first draft carefully, and because I refused to let fear rewrite facts. Years later, ANRS became a global standard in adaptive robotics. Our company partnered with international research groups and humanitarian agencies. One afternoon, I received an award for innovation and integrity in technology. Standing on that stage, I thought back to the conference room, where Marcus first showed me the altered contract. I remembered the shock, the helplessness, the disbelief. If I could speak to that earlier version of myself, I would tell her one thing. Do not panic. Look closer, because truth leaves fingerprints. As I accepted the award, I thanked my team and mentors. I also thanked Priya publicly for her forensic expertise. After the ceremony, a young engineer approached me. How do you protect yourself in this industry? She asked. I smiled. Write your own first draft, I said, and keep it safe. Then I added something new. And never let someone convince you that your voice is smaller than your work. Sometimes I wondered what Marcus thought during his final moments in the courtroom. Did he regret the choice? Did he think he could outsmart the system forever? Power can blur judgment. Success can create overconfidence. He believed that controlling legal documents meant controlling reality. But digital truth is stubborn. It records time, sequence, authorship. It cannot easily be erased. That was the irony. As an executive in a tech company, Marcus underestimated technology itself. He forgot that engineers design systems to track change. And I was an engineer first. I did not need loud speeches or dramatic confrontations. I needed logs. The lesson of my story spread beyond technology. Friends in creative fields began storing drafts and timestamps for their writing and art. Entrepreneurs reviewed their contracts more carefully. Students asked professors about version control. It was not about distrust. It was about clarity. Clear agreements protect everyone involved. Looking back, I realized revenge had never truly driven me. Justice had. I wanted my work recognized honestly. I wanted the truth recorded correctly. And in the end, it was. Not because I shouted, but because I prepared. On the anniversary of the court ruling, I visited the original lab building. Ether had changed leadership by then. The atmosphere felt different, lighter, more transparent. A former colleague gave me a quiet tour. The lab where ANRS was born still stood, though upgraded. I ran my hand along a workbench and remembered long nights of coding. I remembered excitement before the betrayal. Creation always carries risk. Sharing ideas requires courage, but fear should never stop innovation. What happened to me was painful, yet it also strengthened my resolve to build systems rooted in fairness. Before leaving, I stood alone in the empty lab for a moment. I felt no anger, only closure. When I think about everything now, the story feels almost unreal. A single altered clause nearly erased years of work. A single typo exposed a lie. He rewrote my contract. But he forgot who wrote the first draft. And that made all the difference. I still keep copies of every major document I create. Not because I expect betrayal, but because I respect the value of authorship. Our words matter. Our ideas matter. And the truth, when protected carefully, has a way of rising. It may take time. It may require courage, but it rises.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.